So I'm current RAF president, Aaron Latanzio. Excited to have such a good group here tonight. Nice to see a lot of faces we haven't seen too frequently in a while. Just a couple of logistical things before we get started. Obviously, everybody's muted right now. We're going to keep it that way just to avoid lots of back and forth noise. If you can put any questions you have in the chat, the everything chat, we've got time at the end for questions, so we'll wait then to bring them up and let Katie address any questions anybody's got as we're going through. Kind of flag me down if you're having issues. I'm going to do the same to Katie when she's going, but any kind of urgent things, flag me down. Obviously tonight's got a little bit of a freelance focus, but hopefully even for you non-freelancers that are here, there'll be some value. Before we get to tonight, I wanted to talk about a couple of other RAF digital things coming up. So we've got a June 20 Mab on June 16th. We've got Carrie Ribby, the director of marketing for Black Button Distilling, and I think also their head distiller will be on talking about the art and no science of flipping around a business model in 48 hours. So they're going to talk about what they did in response to the pandemic and some creative things that they took away from that they think will be valuable for people, beyond just a pandemic world. So that should be really good. They're also doing a special RAF discount code between the 2nd of June and the event on the 16th. So you can order some curbside cocktail if you want to have an actual Black Button Distilling beverage with us while we're on. You'll see the code in the emails, but it's RAF10. That'll be live on the 2nd anyways, so you can't get in there ahead of time. But we've also got Rad Week coming up in September. We've teased a little bit about the fact that it's in September versus November this year. We just met this past week to kind of kick things off, and we've decided we're going to kind of go all digital for everything, just to be safe, so that we don't have to cancel and shift. We're going to try and focus things a little bit more, not have as many events, but have some events that are a little bit more valuable, and not that the other events weren't valuable, but that are really focused and strong, and we can potentially bring in some speakers that we wouldn't bring in normally because of the digital environment. And we're going to try and shift more events to the day so that you're not, hopefully you can just kind of block out an hour of your time in the middle of your day if we give you enough notice, rather than tack on more computer time at the end of the day after sitting in front of a computer all day. So there'll still be one evening event. We'll still be doing something to celebrate the Addies and still do something to recover what we lost. But it'll be a little different this year than last year and years past. So to get over to tonight's purpose, obviously the pandemic has really changed and challenged just about everything we do in our day-to-day lives, right? And freelancers probably have additional obstacles, that they wouldn't normally anticipate. So Katie's gonna, from Creative Circle, is gonna talk about some tips on positioning yourself as remote ready, and really digging on some questions and ideas for freelancing in this time. So I'm gonna hand it off to Katie now.
Thank you, Aaron. Woo! Yes, if you guys want to give me thumbs up, hopefully not any thumbs down, clap, whatever, laugh. I can see yes, I see some thumbs up already. I love it. It's definitely different doing this. Engagement I can see out of the corner of my eye, the better. But can you guys still hear me okay? Everybody good? Thumbs up? Okay. All right, so thank you guys for having me. I feel very, very grateful to be here. I actually used to work at Partners in Napier, so that's how I know Kelly Chapman. I see a couple of my old Partners peeps on here, so it is so good to be here. And again, I feel really, really grateful to be here. But like Aaron said, now I work for a company called Creative. You're probably not familiar with them because they're not in the Rochester market specifically, but we're the largest creative staffing agency in the business, and we're nationwide. We focus specifically on, so we only staff for creative, marketing, and digital roles, which makes us really, really niche in our area. We have 30 offices across the country. We also have an office in Toronto, and I used to work for our office in Chicago on the recruiting side, and now I work remotely on their corporate communications team here from Rochester. But I work remotely because we don't actually have a physical office in Rochester, so I've been working from home even before the rest of the world kind of started to do the same. So I've been in this boat a little bit longer, which will hopefully give you some more insights and allow me to help you even that much more. So some of you might know what it means when I say that Creative Circle is the staffing agency, and some of you might not, and that's totally okay. Before I got into this industry, I didn't really fully understand what a staffing agency was, but in the past 3 years that I've had of experience in this industry, the best way that I can describe it is think of us kind of like Cupid. So bear with me because this is kind of a weird analogy, but it's the best way that I can make it stick in people's minds. So a company has an open job to fill, and a candidate, maybe like yourselves, if you're freelancers or you're looking for a new full-time job, that candidate's looking for a new role. And we at Creative Circle are really like Cupid in the middle, helping each party find their perfect match. So we're like that middleman. That's always how I think of it in my head, and that really helps it stick for some other people too. When you're like, staffing agency, what is that? So that is what it is, and that hopefully will be something that helps stick as I go through this and as you wonder why the heck I'm talking to you today. And I really love that our company's mission centers around helping people find jobs, and hopefully I can share a few tips with you today from the staffing perspective that will be really valuable. So moving into our agenda, so you guys kind of know what's coming. We're going to keep this pretty short and sweet. It's going to be pretty to the point, but I really do want it to be an open dialogue. So feel free to ask questions by using that chat feature on your screen. Aaron's going to be helping to moderate those, and he'll bring them to my attention likely at the end of the presentation. But we do have a few topics to get us started, and I'm going to really position this almost in a Q&A kind of format based on what we're hearing the most in the market right now and what we're also hearing from our candidates at Creative Circle. So some of the key topics that we're going to touch on are the current job market, freelancing during this time, and of course going remote, what you can do now to prepare for post-COVID. And a lot of us right now are kind of on the brink of that post-COVID. We're kind of just starting to skim that surface on what life after and what that new normal looks like. So we'll talk about things like building your resume and tips that we have for continuing to apply, interview for new jobs, and also some available resources for you. And just know that I'm happy to always be so if you ever want to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, I'm more than happy to just kind of brainstorm and talk through anything you guys might see fit. If you guys want to use me as a resource as well, I'm happy to oblige. So that's a quick agenda, what we're going to get into. So let's start by talking about the current job market. So a lot of the questions we get are companies still hiring? Is anybody out there hiring? And what are you seeing right now? So the short answer is yes. Companies are definitely still hiring right now. There are some industries that are hiring more frequently and more rapidly than others. The healthcare and the pharmacy, of course, are kind of top of mind, but other verticals are definitely hiring as well. As far as specific jobs that we're seeing and some of those job titles that are peaking up a little bit more, at Creative Circle, we're really seeing an interest in medical writers and in art directors, because a lot of companies are working to create multiple different advertising tactics. So those are some different titles that, were before, but are really becoming more and more popular now. Also, to me, this is something that held true before and is probably even more true now, that content is still king, 1,000%, because companies are figuring out what's our positioning right now? How are we going to communicate with these people, with our audience, and what does that messaging look like? So content is more prevalent than ever. I feel like it's always kind of been king, but maybe now even more prevalent. So candidates content skills, but also help present that content. So presentation skills are being requested more often, because it's all right, now we're crafting our messaging, but how are we going to convey that messaging? So as companies shift to that messaging, those roles are becoming definitely more popular. Most of the opportunities now, as I'm sure that you can all imagine, are short term, that totally, but don't forget that there is always that as a candidate employee, when you're proving your value, for us to hear when we ask a client like, okay, you have this project that you want a new candidate for, what's the like the project length, like what's the assignment length? More often than not, it's, well, right now it's 3 months and then we'll see, or it's 3 to 6 months or it's 3 months with the potential to extend. So I think right now, because no one can foresee the future, no one can really plan 5-10 steps ahead like maybe to do, that opportunity for projects to extend and for you to prove value is even more apparent now than it was before. So keep that in the back of your mind, that even if a project has an end date to it technically, there's always the option and the opportunity for it to extend. Of course, we're still in very much unknown territory right now. So companies are being cautious and selective, but they're definitely still seeing activity, which is a huge, huge plus. The other area that I think now more than ever, and in my role personally, what I've really listened to clients say and the growth that they're seeing in this area is planning and strategy are so big right now, because companies are taking a step back. They're evaluating their budgets, they're evaluating their projects, they're even evaluating their positioning in the market. In a lot of ways, it's like a clean slate, and brands have to prove themselves all over. Brands have to reintroduce themselves all over. Brands have to connect with their audience in a whole new way. So companies are taking that step back and planning for that and putting those pieces in place for when it is go time. So I've personally seen in my position on like the corporate communication side, a lot of companies are sending out formal RFPs, requests for proposals. They're sending out formal pitches for future businesses because they're doing some of that like dirty work right now, like that legwork, so that when all those approvals come in and they know what they want to say and how they want to say it, all their ducks are in a row. So anything with planning, anything with strategy is really important. So keep that in the back of your mind, even if you're not a planner or a strategist in any way. If you have some of those strategic skills, that strategic thinking, those are things that you want to make sure that you're presenting forward when you're seeing new opportunities. So definitely have faith that companies who might not be hiring right now, they're still determining who they want to hire in the near future. So continue to stay top of mind as they put some of those pieces together and put those pieces in the current. All right, so let's move into freelancing during this time, which I'm assuming is pretty relevant for a lot of you. So how has this crisis changed what recruiters are looking for? And another question we hear a lot too is, how has it affected the rates that recruiters and companies are willing to pay? So this is a little bit twofold, but as far as what companies are looking for, because there are very specific and time-sensitive requests coming in, we're really recommending that our freelancers include specific projects and detail regarding the types of work that they have done. Some of you may already be doing this, but just a reminder that the more specific you can be, the better. And the reason for that is because this really helps the companies make a really, really quick decision on fit, and can expedite that onboarding process. So as you're thinking through that tactically, also remember that if you have, one resume, or you have, your one online portfolio, make sure that as you're sending that into companies, as you're maybe like applying for jobs or looking for more freelance opportunities, that you're either calling attention to specific things that is relevant to that company, or you're, maybe tweaking a couple things, maybe tweaking the order of things on your resume or in your email to the company, or saying, hey, like, make sure you take a look at this. I feel like it's really relevant to the work that you're doing right now. So the more tailored you can be in that approach, and again, like the more strategic and thoughtful you can be in that approach, the better. As far as rates go, this is a question we're seeing a lot. We're really still seeing that rates, like hourly rates that freelancers are going for, it always has, and it still is. It really just varies by the skill set and experience. As I'm sure you all know, it's also dependent on the market that you're in as well. So those things really haven't changed much. It's not like we've seen rates drastically drop due to this, but I think in general, something to keep in mind is that there's less work and more people to choose from. So it's never a bad idea to be flexible and to be competitive with your pricing. So there's two things kind of keep in mind with this one. So you may want to consider eliminating, if you do this, charging for what we call like standby time, as this should kind of be expected due to the remote working conditions right now. So really just make sure that you're only charging for the time that you're truly, truly working. The other thing that is important that not everyone's aware of or doesn't always think of this as an option, but also smart to include a range for your hourly rate. So that really will show a company that you're flexible from the start. And what we see most often and what we recommend is a $10 range in your rate is completely fair and like very, very normal. If your hourly rate is usually $55 an hour, maybe consider changing that to $50 to $60 an hour to show you're flexible, because this will give you and the company some wiggle room. And it also helps you think through, like, what am I willing to, be paid? Like, what is that rate I'm willing to go to? And it just shows again that you have that flexibility. So that's something that's very normal and very popular, but that $10 range is kind of like that sweet spot. All right, now we're going to talk about going remote. So again, question we hear most often: how are companies adjusting, moving from on-site work to remote work? And honestly, I think a lot of companies at first were maybe like dreadful and weary, and how are we going to do this, and how are we going to transition, and this is totally different, and we're not set up for this. But I think a lot of companies have been surprised with how well it's actually working. Overall, at Creative Circle, we've been really impressed with the efficiencies and how much work is being generated in a short amount of time. There have, of course, been some technology challenges. I think that that's inevitable no matter what. I think it always has been, always will be. But as these challenges are worked through, I think it's going to really open doors moving forward to work differently, and also to invite more distant and remote working experiences, which for you is, if you're a freelancer listening, that really increases the number of opportunities that you might have. Because before, where sometimes you'd see like a job post listing and it was like on-site only or in office only, a lot of times now you'll see like, especially now, remote flexibility. And I think that that trend will continue to stay, where companies are like, all right, well, yes, we want to get back to the office and we kind of want to get back to the way that things maybe were before, but we can do this. We can work remote. We can offer more flexibility. So I think that those opportunities will become more prevalent, which I think will be helpful and valuable. But as you're thinking through that, and knowing that this remote work will probably be more prevalent, one challenge that freelancers really need to think through as they move forward is how and if a lack of like that on-site will affect your work, your time, that end product, all of those different details. And thinking through it is, but the big thing to remember is, how can you offer a solution to those challenges to put you a step ahead? Because you want to make it really, really clear in your conversations with the companies that you're talking with that you're solution oriented, especially now. So you want to make that clear, whether it's giving an example of, hey, I worked on a similar project where it was entirely remote and we had to use this software, and this is how we met, and this is how we did our rounds of revisions, and whatever the case may be, this is how we found brainstorming to be best. Make sure that you're working in those solutions into your conversations. Now we'll talk about what you can do right now to prepare for life post-COVID. And as we mentioned, we're kind of like teetering on that post-COVID life, but it's all a little unforeseen at the moment. So right now, to our at Creative is to be proactive, prepare now to be ready for when things really, really get back to like that new normal and a more consistent pace. So these are some like tactical things that you can do right now to get yourself prepared. So the first thing you can do is make sure on your computer you download any programs, any software that you might need, because the last thing that you want to have happen is for a client to come to you with a quick turn project and your software needs hours of updating before you can even begin. So make sure that you are really doing those tedious tasks now. Another thing that you can do is reach out now to get set up in a company's system as a vendor or a freelance contractor. A lot of times there's paperwork that you have to do ahead of time or just different onboarding details. So asking proactively, whether it's with your HR contact or your hiring manager or whoever you might know there, or just like as soon as maybe you get the job or whatever the case may be, just reach out and get set up, because sometimes for a company, those details are on the back burner because they have so much else to think about. So if you can be that person that says, hey, what can I do to get officially set up? Is there any paperwork you need me to fill out? I want to make sure that when you give me that assignment, I'm ready to go. So take care of that stuff now and think through that. You can also use this time to create your resume if you don't have one already, build your book or portfolio, or now is a really good time if you haven't recently to have your book or portfolio reviewed. I think a lot of people have even a little bit of extra time on their hands, and also people are, and what I've seen and come across, people are really excited to help other people and want to help other people succeed. So if you can get some fresh eyes on your portfolio or fresh eyes on your book or your resume, now is a really good time to maximize like that review opportunity. Make sure you're updating your LinkedIn information, networking for new opportunities, attending webinars. You guys are all ahead of the game right now just by being here today, and really just do those things that are all really helpful. So those are all kind of tactical things you can do to set yourself up for immediate success when that tide really starts to turn. But also at the end of the day, like, don't forget to be human, because right now more than ever, I feel like little things like complimenting a company or an agency on the work that they've been doing during this time, especially if you notice like, hey, I realize that you guys just put out a whole new campaign, or I realize that you guys are running totally different ads than you used to, or I realize that your newsletter content is updated. If you're aware of that and mindful of that, like, I actually, one of our proofreaders at Partners in Napier always used to say, never let a kind thought go unsaid. And that always stuck with me. And I think now more than ever, especially when it comes to the hard work that people are doing just to stay afloat in their jobs right now, or just to shift gears in their job right now, if you can kind of build that relationship and keep a pulse on what's going on, that can really give you leverage, because people want connection right now. That's something that a lot of us have really been lacking in this isolation. So if you can reach out and build that connection and show that you know what's going on in their business, then that really can give you a leg up. So speaking of what else you can do to prepare, let's talk about building your resume. So as the staffing agency, our recruiters work with freelancers and candidates all the time on tips that we can share with them to help with their resume. So a few that we always give out to our freelancers is, because you've been freelancing, most of you, but this kind of applies, but particularly for freelancing, it can be tricky sometimes listing exactly like where and what you've been working on. So if you have multiple projects across multiple timeframes, we really recommend listing timeframes and then grouping clients and projects underneath each year, because that helps it to stay organized and less scattered. Because if you're working on, like, you started one project in February, and then you started another project at the end of February, and then that first project ended in March, but the second project kept going, like, it can get kind of scattered and crazy. So if you can list like the time frames and then the grouping of the clients and projects underneath it, then sometimes that really helps keep it a little bit more organized. And depending on the work you've done, that might require a shorter description for each project. But either way, no matter how you're describing your work on your resume or in your portfolio, you really want to give a clear picture of the value that you've been providing. You don't want to just say like the job title and the company and the time frame that you were there. Like, what was the ROI? What were the impressions? What was the engagement? All those different things that, like, those like hard-hitting selling points, you really want to make sure that you're plugging in those value points. More than ever now, this is a really good time to scan your resume and make sure that you're highlighting keywords that maybe are a little bit different now and hold more meaning than they did before. Things like remote, connected, organization skills, project management skills, all these things that show that you're comfortable and able to work in these new work from home conditions without needing to be monitored in person to stay on task. So really the biggest thing is like, you don't want to make them guess if you can handle today's landscape. You really want to spell it out for them. So use those keywords and plug that in and make sure that you're like clear as day, like, hey, I can work from anywhere and I can handle this. And I'm going to tell you exactly how, and these are the words that you need to focus on, like make it plain as day for them. Another tip, and this is kind of like a normal one that you probably might hear, but a good time as you're reviewing your resume or your portfolio, really make sure that your content and brand is consistent across the board, whether it's the colors you're using, your logos, your fonts, totals, dates, all of those different things. They should all match across your website, your resume, your cover letter, LinkedIn. All of those little details matter, especially now, because think back to a couple slides ago when we were talking that in general, there's a little bit less work going around and more people who want it. So make sure that you're as polished as possible, because that will help you rise above the pack. Lastly, any gaps in your resume. If you have gaps in your resume, you really want to explain them. You don't want, again, you don't want to make them guess. You really just want to spell it out for them. So whether you took time for personal development or you were volunteering or whatever the case may be, don't make them go, well, I don't know what they were doing for all this time. Like, just spell it out. And if they want to dig further and ask about it, then so be it, but explain any gaps that you have in your resume. At the very last slide, we'll include a link for this, but we have a lot of resume tools on our blog at Creative Circle on our website for how to craft a strong resume, portfolio, and also some other like interview and advice and tips. So we have a couple more slides to go through, but just know that that link and those resources will be available for you too. All right. Moving on to continuing to apply and interview for jobs. So in the face of this pandemic that we're dealing with, we get a lot of questions about tips for successful video interviews now that they're almost all on video, and where to find different opportunities. So these are a few no-brainers, good reminders for all of us. So for successful video interviews, you really want to make sure you're turning off your IMs and your chats, putting your phone on silent. And this is a big one that I didn't think about. There it is. Hey, Aaron. This is one that I didn't think about, but letting the other people in your house know what you're doing, really important one to think about. So letting them, that, hey, I have a call that's coming up in 30 minutes. It's going to be an hour long. Like, this is what I need you to do. I need you to not distract me. Don't knock out. You also want to check the background behind you before the call to make sure it's appropriate. Do a sound and volume check. Make sure the screen that you're looking at is the screen where the camera is, to ensure eye contact. It can be hard when you're like dressed professionally from the waist up at the very least. There's also lots of tools at your disposal to help search for job opportunities. LinkedIn and Behance are two of our favorites. You can also go on, even in Buffalo job board. I'm not sure if the RAF has one, but there's local job boards for the creative market specifically in our larger region that are really helpful. And again, you can always ask me if you need tips or questions or advice on any of that. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath because we are into questions. Unmute Aaron. Oh, I think I unmuted him. All right,
yep.
Aaron.
I don't know how I got muted, but it's okay. I got a couple questions, but as we're answering these, if everybody wants to add any additional questions to the chat, please do. So the first one I've got here is related to sending promo pieces to possible leads versus trying to just engage current clients? Is it a good time now to send new promo pieces to leads, or is it a good time to focus on current client relationships and keeping those going?
I think it would depend on what your current client relationship is like. You never want to do anything to like rock the boat if you have a good thing going and that trust there, especially if those new leads might be competitors. So I think it depends on what those details look like. But I don't think it's a bad time. Everything's so uncertain right now that I don't think it's a bad time to extend your relationships and to grow your relationships. I just think you always want to make sure you're doing it in an ethical way and in a really tactful way. So it could be the difference between like, sending one of your leads like hard sample versus maybe you see the work that they're doing and you compliment that work and you say, hey, like I actually did something really similar, blah, blah, blah. I think it's just about that tact and the style of communication that you use. But yeah, so it's a balance. I need to know more details, but it's definitely a balance, and it's not a bad thing to grow new relationships as long as you're being respectful to the ones that you still have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another one related to Creative Circle. Obviously, you have the ability to select a city where you work. Yep. How does that work now when technically, you can work from home? So what do you pick? Can you pick another city, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So what happens when you go on, like, if you were, I'm thinking through what the specific details of the question are, but and you see a job listing in like Atlanta or something, what happens when you reply to that job is it goes to the recruiters in that market, and then they'll help you like get set up as a candidate in that market. So before this coronavirus era, really the way it worked, so to speak, was you really just kind of applied for jobs in the market that you were. So more opportunities now remotely, but what I would recommend, like if you guys are from like the New York City or Toronto market, and the best thing you can do if you see like a job posting on our site is to reply directly to that job posting. Does that answer the question?
We'll see. I'm waiting for a response. In the meantime, I got another question from a student. As a recent RIT grad, ad and PR grad, interested in working in advertising marketing, preferably planning strategy or account management, any advice for recent grads during this time, opportunities for freelancing and remote work for grads?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
No, I can. I just wasn't sure. So for recent graduates, one of the best things I think that you can do is if you go on LinkedIn, there's a way that you can look up alumni from your college. And I would look through some of your alumni and see if any of them work for advertising agencies in the area, companies that you would love to work for one day in the area, and start connecting with those people. That's actually how I found my job at Creative Circle. Was I connected with somebody who I went to the same college with in Buffalo. So really use your alumni to your advantage, because that's just like such a good piece of camaraderie that people want to help people that they went to school with. Attending events like this is huge, and it kind of ties back, like pay attention to the work that the companies or the agencies that you respect are doing, and then find out who it is. Like if it's like a campaign that you love, like who is the creative director on it, connect with them on LinkedIn, like compliment their work, build a relationship with them, like maybe ask them if they wouldn't mind doing a portfolio review for you because you're just getting your toes in the water. Like I think more than anything, as you're just starting out, it's so much about relationships, and then looking at the local job boards and asking around to see if there's any opportunities. And also, especially if you're just getting started out, ask about internships. Maybe there's unpaid work that you can do just to build up your portfolios. Obviously that's not ideal, but just to build up your book, that's a good way to do it, and to also offer value to people who might have tighter budgets right now too.
Great, thanks. One kind of small follow-up to the question about like focusing time on leads and potential new work versus focusing on current clients? Again, I guess you probably need to know the kind of current client load, but assuming that there's a decent load of current clients, is there more, I guess the question being, where is there more value in spending time? Like leads where you may be competing with lots of others, or focusing in on, really growing or, flexing those current client relationships?
I mean, it really depends, but I think that if you're already working with a current client, like my first thought would be, instead of, and again, I don't know the situation, but instead of maybe having like wander trying to think of something else, like maybe you take a step back and figure out like, where else can I provide value to my current clients? Like maybe I'm just doing, graphic design right now. Do I have production chops that I can offer? Can I do anything different? Can I mentor somebody? Can I, raise my hand for a different project? Like, I think that would be personally my first step, is how can I show value to the people that are already putting their trust in me, would be where my mind would go first. And whoever asked the question, if you want to like chat with me after, reach out to me and like go into more detail. I'm happy to get like specifics and talk through it with you. I'd be happy to do that.
TC's waving at you. Great. Any other questions? Last minute questions to get in? I'll give you a second to get them in. Otherwise, I don't have any others.
I hope this value.
I did just get one.
Okay.
Can you touch on the impact of a cover letter when cold responding to a job posting or freelance opportunity? Are they still viewed as important, or are they generally not read in today's more digital world and more dense environment?
I think it would depend on the role. I think if you're like a copywriter, I think a cover letter can be a great asset. I don't think that they're dismissed, but I would definitely recommend like keep it succinct, keep it hard hitting. If you're going to do something like that, like make sure that you're not just like, I'm going to reiterate everything in my resume, but put it in long sentence form in a cover letter. Like nobody wants to read that. But if you're going to say like, if you're going to hit it home with understanding the work that they've been doing and how aware you are and how like the good pulse that you have on the work that they've been doing, or maybe the relationships you've already built there, or an example of work that you just did with great ROI that's similar to something that they're working on. Like if you can make it impactful and keep it succinct, then by all means go for it. But if you're just going to throw it in, then it's worth it.
Great, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any others? Not that anybody can really verbally tell me if there's any other questions, but I'll give it another second to see if any more come in. And if not, I guess I could go to gallery mode and see if anybody's waving me down. No one's waving me down. All right. We'll call that the end of the questions then. I just want to thank Katie for being here tonight, for joining us and sharing some of this wisdom. Hopefully it was impactful. There's some great ideas here, regardless of your freelancing status or where you are in the job seeking world. We'll share. Well, you can see there's a great link there on the site, but we'll share resources. And Katie said, feel free to reach out to her with any questions. And we'll share the recording of this as well at the end. Got to figure out how to do that, but we'll share the recording. Just don't forget, next month we've got another 20 Mab coming up. Hopefully we'll see most of you there with Black Button Distilling, and be on the lookout for Grad Week information. Enjoy your start of your summer, everybody. Good seeing y'all.
Thank you guys so much.